Okay, welcome back. We're on page 350. We're talking about the three different types of controls: procedural, physical, and technical. And my question to you was, which of those three do you think is the most difficult to do? Which is the one that's going to cause you the most amount of headache? It's those pesky damn users. Yeah. You can have the most brilliant physical controls, and you'll have some, good super duper locks and doors and iris scanners and fingerprint readers, and one of your users is going to prop the door open with a trash can. Yeah, you can have a fantastic system for having a firewall, and somebody's going to go unplug it. The users are the tough ones. How many times have you talked, go to somebody's place and say, now, make sure you don't forget your password, and so they have it, with a sticky note up on the corner of their screen. Yeah, them dang users, they're the tough ones. And they can certainly mess up your system. You got to spend an awful lot of time on the procedural part. Much, much more time on procedural than you do on the things that actually cost money. Walls cost money, locks cost money, firewalls cost money. Telling people to change their password doesn't cost a dime. And unfortunately, the lowest cost of all three is the one that's going to cause you the most amount of headache. Okay. So on page 351, they finally start talking about the network part of information security. So it's the provision of information security that's designed to dampen the dangers created by the network. Okay, how's that? Now, we're not necessarily talking about network hardware and software. We're not necessarily talking about, switches and routers, the cables, right? That's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about the big picture, and that is most of these networks are connected to the internet, and so people coming in from the outside can sneak in and get data that you don't want. So it's a more of a big picture. Don't think of network security as, physical things that you can touch. Okay, cool. So let's just talk about a few examples to try and drill this home. So one would be like your machine got a virus from an email attachment. Okay, a phishing attack where somebody sent you an email that sounded pretty doggone legitimate, and somebody provided their name and password because they thought that was what they're supposed to do. Some sort of intrusion attempt where somebody's trying different combinations of names and passwords trying to break in, or things like that. So again, none of those are physical things, right? You can't touch those. Good. Okay. All right. So almost all businesses store valuable information on their interior LAN, right? That makes sense. And almost all businesses have some sort of a connection between their LAN and the internet. So right off the bat, you kind of think, whoa. There's an example here that I like to talk about is the one with Target. So Target is a major retailer, and before the Christmas season 2013, it's been a while, they essentially had somebody sneak in through a subcontractor, was able to reprogram their point of sale terminals so that it would steal their credit card data. So yeah, for a month there, they were collecting, and it turned out they thought it was about 40,000 accounts that got hacked. Turned out it was closer to 70,000. So 70,000 people got affected by this. Their credit card information was stolen. By the way, in other parts of the world, they've pretty much will transition to the chip and pin system. And so if you were using a chip and pin scenario and they stole the data from the reader, there's hardly anything in the reader that would do them any good because the chip data is not actually stored. And so they would get like half of the information they would need to be able to exploit your card. So it wouldn't be near as useful to them. Okay. This is a very interesting topic on how it actually happened. If you want to go through and read that, I would encourage it. But bottom line is, 70,000 people had their credit card information stolen. Yeah, that's a big business. So yeah, you gotta pay attention. Yeah, I'm not gonna go through all that. So back on this, they categorize these things is the CIA part. Remember the CIA part? Confidentiality and integrity and availability. But you really have to consider that from an incoming perspective and an outgoing perspective. So the types of controls that you use are different, whether it's going in or out. So the first category they talk about on page, here. So confidentiality. So if it's incoming, the thing I need to do is I need to do patching my software, Microsoft patches and things. I need to do some sort of authentication and authorization, names and passwords and permissions. But to make sure things confidential outgoing, I don't use those techniques. I use encryption. And to maintain integrity, incoming, I'm blocking the bad guys with this appliance called a firewall. But for outgoing, I'm just digitally signing my documents so that people know if anyone messed with it. And availability, this is all about, virus protection and training. And then for outgoing, it basically means, don't have one router, have two, and don't have one cable, have three. So these categories. So we're going to start with the incoming confidentiality and just work our way through this table. Okay. So on page 352, they finally start talking about the incoming confidentiality. And confidentiality, remember, is no peeking. That's a good way to describe it. No peeking. Okay. So the first thing to talk about is patching. Now, the problem with patching is that it happens kind of sort of after the fact. In other words, somebody discovers a vulnerability. Somebody discovers some sort of a vulnerability, and it might take them, a week to figure it out and publish a patch. And so there's a period of time there where the vulnerabilities exist but isn't being patched. So that time lag is kind of bad. So all patches occur after the vulnerability has been exposed, right? All right. So how long does it take to do that? Well, some of them, if you go to some of these research sites that do this for a living, they have examples where a vulnerability has been discovered and it took the vendor over a year to produce a patched version. That's not very common, but it is within the realm of possibility. So have you heard the thing called a 0-day vulnerability? 0 day, typically the way it works is somebody discovers a vulnerability. It takes them, a week to patch it. They send the patch out, and during this period of time, no one has currently exploited that weakness. Okay, so that, in other words, when the patch comes out, you're okay because no one else has discovered it and no one else is actively attacking that particular vulnerability. But a 0-day one means the attack is already underway as the patch is coming out. So even though you patched, you still may have been affected by the vulnerability before the patch arrived. So yeah, 0-day means we're late. The patch is coming out after the cat is out of the bag, or the horse has left the barn, or whatever metaphor you would like. It's happening after the fact. Someone has discovered a vulnerability. They're actively using it to attack machines, and then the patch comes out afterwards. Okay, 0-day. So let's talk about Microsoft updates. So you've probably gone to your machine and gone through and said, I'd like to do updates. And it basically tells you, what all the updates you have. And this is actually pretty good. You should pay attention, for example, to the failed ones, because that means you were offered an update and weren't able to do it. Other versions of Windows 10, for example, there's not really much of an option anymore for most versions of Windows 10. You're going to get the updates whether you click on anything or not. So it's set up automatically to do automatic patching, and you really don't have much of a choice. So I'm good, right? I've got I've got my thing turned on here, and I'm good to go, and right? I don't have any problems. No, because this only updates Microsoft products. Well, is that the only thing you have on your machine? Is Microsoft products? That it? You don't have anything else? So if I go here to Programs and Features and sort by publisher, okay, so that means I need to be getting patches from Adobe and Elaborate Bytes and Google and Hewlett Packard and I don't know, Oracle and blah, 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 blah. Because Windows Update only does Microsoft products. So if you have a vulnerability in the Java, Microsoft Update is not going to catch that. So I use another product, a product called Secunia. Secunia is a software that you can buy. I'm sorry, not buy. It's free. A piece of software that's free that will look at your entire machine, not just the Microsoft parts, and tell you, okay, this Flash player is out of date, and this Java piece is out of date, and this terminal software you have over here is out of date. So it does the big picture, which is a heck of a lot better for getting things done. Now, it will also show you the Microsoft ones, all right? So you can use this. You can download it from secunia.com. You can download this little piece of software, install it on your machine, run it. You can let it run forever, running in the background. That's not what I do. In fact, I'm going to see what it says I need to do here, because that's kind of interesting. I'm going to let this run in the background as we're talking. I'm just going to scan my system. Okay, so bottom line is Microsoft updates only do the Microsoft things, and you probably have a heck of a lot more, so you have more responsibilities than you might think. Secunia is an excellent way of doing that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is authentication and authorization. Yay! So right off the bat, what is the difference between authentication and authorization? So authentication is, am I who I say I am? In other words, is that me? Can you prove that it's me? Okay, that kind of thing. Or can you prove that it's you? Yeah, I have to say that correctly. So typically, authentication is things like a login prompt and a password, right? If you know the login prompt and password, it's most likely you. So another way of doing authentication is, you go to the bank and you want to cash a check. And so you go say, hey, here's my check. They're going to say, can I see a form of ID? So you show them your driver's license. This is the same thing. It's some sort of proof that you are who you say you are. So authentication is all about, proving that you are who you say you are. Oh, I thought it was done. All right. On the other hand, authorization is after I know who you are, now I can tell what it is you have permissions to do. Now, in the old days, Windows XP and way, way, way back when, people logged onto their computers and they had administrator rights, so they could do practically anything on their machines. That's not the way it works now. You log into a modern Windows computer, and your permissions are significantly reduced, and you have to specifically say, I would like to add an application. There's a little pop-up that comes up and says, dude, are you sure? You go, yeah. And so it's a way of elevating you're temporarily elevating your authorization to do things, and then it brings it back down. So authorization is all about, do I have the right kind of permissions? Think about a database. There could be a database where I have permission to be able to read from this database, but not write to the database. Okay, this is a good place to stop for the 15-minute mark, and we'll pick this thing up again in just a few.